My mom yelled, asterisk asterisk, you have 48 hours to get your stuff out. The house is your sister's now. Asterisk asterisk, I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, let the words settle into my chest, and began preparing to. Days later, when my sister walked through that front door, she wished she had never stepped inside. Before we get to what I did, let me ask you something. Have you ever been the one carrying the weight while someone else wore the crown? Have you ever built something with your bare hands only to watch someone else pose in front of it for applause? Drop a yes in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who understands this kind of story. When my mother, Erin, hurled those words at me, they didn't bounce off the walls. They clung to the air, thick and suffocating like the heavy savanna humidity pressing against the windows. 40-8 hours. That was the deadline she gave me to vacate the life I had spent 5 years resurrecting from ruin. My sister, Kelsey, needed the house. She needed it for her wedding photos, for her brand partnerships, for the carefully filtered fantasy she fed to her followers. She needed exposed brick and antique trim and soft golden light for bridal content. I slowly turned my head and looked round the foyer, the hand-restored wainscoting I had sanded until my palms blistered, the custom crown molding I had tracked down at a salvage warehouse in Atlanta and installed piece by piece, the staircase I had reinforced when the steps sagged under their own age. My father, Ryan, wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared instead at the hardwood floors I had paid to have refinished the year before. His silence was louder than my mother's shouting. This wasn't just a house. It had been a decaying Victorian shell when my grandmother Ellen wore past and left it behind. The roof sat like a tired spine. Rainwater pooled in the attic. The foundation had hairline fractures that spidered down the brick. The city had already issued warnings. One more failed inspection and it would have been condemned. My parents didn't have the money to save it. The estimate came back at $165,000. They didn't have $16,500. But I did, or at least, I had enough to try. I was 20 for then, barely 2 years into launching my interior architecture firm. Every contract I signed felt like oxygen. Every paycheck went straight into materials, permits, structural reinforcements. I drained my savings account to the last 4 digits. I skipped vacations. I postponed dating. I spent my Saturdays scraping lead paint off window frames while my friends posted brunch photos. I rewired outlets. I negotiated with roofers. I studied foundation repair manuals at midnight. And I did it because one evening, standing in the crumbling kitchen, my father had looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Haley, this will always be your home. You're saving our family's legacy." Double quotes. Always thought I built my future on that word. Standing in the foyer now, watching my mother check her watch impatiently as if I were late for my own eviction, I understood something brutal. I hadn't been investing. I had been paying emotional rent. In my family, love was never freely given. It was earned, negotiated, maintained like property. My therapist calls it the invisible survival contract. When you grow up feeling like a backup plan instead of a priority, you learn to earn your place. You become the dependable one, the fixer, the one who anticipates disasters before they happen. Because if you stop being useful, you risk becoming disposable. That $165,000 wasn't just construction costs. It was my down payment on belonging. I thought if I restored the house, maybe I would finally feel restored to. But Kelsey never had to restore anything. She was the golden child, the influencer, the girl with the soft voice and perfect lighting. She existed and doors opened. Brands sent her free packages. Photographers offered discounted shoots. She didn't repair foundations. She posed on them. And now that the house was flawless magazine ready, sunlight cascading through a perfectly restored windows, my utility had expired. The contractor's job was done. I was being dismissed. "Fine," I said. My voice surprised me. It was level, almost detached. 48 hours. My mother exhaled sharply, almost disappointed I hadn't exploded. She thrived on conflict. Calmness unsettled her. Good, she replied briskly. Make sure the guest room is cleared. Kelsey wants to set up her bridal makeup station there. Of course she did. I walked past them and climbed the staircase I had personally reinforced, each step steady beneath my feet. Inside my bedroom, I shut the door. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the vintage brass doorknob I had hunted down online for 3 weeks. It matched the 1890s hardware perfectly. It gleamed in the afternoon light. It was exquisite. And it was mine. That was when a different kind of calm settled over me. Not grief. Precision. I reached for my phone. I didn't search for moving companies. I called Mike. Mike ran a specialized architectural salvage crew I hired for high-end renovation projects. They didn't demolish. They extracted. Hey, Mike, I said when he answered. I've got an urgent strip out. Full removal. He paused. How full? Everything, I said. If I purchased it, installed it, or financed it. It comes out. Fixtures. He asked. Especially fixtures? There was a low whistle on the other end. What's the deadline? 48 hours. Silence. Then, we'll be there in the morning. The clock started ticking. I became invisible inside my own house. I packed my clothing methodically, folded, boxed, labeled. I ignored my mother's excited chatter downstairs as she measured windows for new drapes she had no intention of paying for. She didn't notice the strips of blue painter's tape I discreetly placed beneath items. She didn't notice the salvage trucks parking quietly along the back alley the next morning. When Mike's team began, it was surgical. No smashing. No chaos. No destruction. Just careful removal. The crystal chandelier in the dining room in wired and lowered with precision. The custom marble slab island in the kitchen lifted, crated, sealed. The smart refrigerator, dishwasher, and induction range disconnected and wheeled out. The imported Italian faucets unscrewed, wrapped, boxed. We removed the custom cabinetry hardware. The antique light switches, the handcrafted curtain rods, the reclaimed wood shelving. We took the drapes. We took the blinds. We removed the custom-built closet system in the guest room Kelsey planned to convert into her bridal suite. We even removed the restored fireplace mantle I had sourced from a demolished historic property. If my credit card had paid for it. It left. My mother finally noticed when she walked into the kitchen and saw their marble island missing. What is happening? She shrieked. I met her gaze evenly. I'm taking my belongings. You can't get the house. I'm not getting it, I said calmly. I'm removing my investments. My father stood frozen in the doorway. Realization dawning slowly across his face. Every improvement. Every upgrade. Every feature that made the house wedding-worthy. Mine. Kelsey arrived 12 hours later. She walked in mid-extraction, phone in hand, already recording for a story. She stopped. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror. The dining room ceiling hung bare where the chandelier had been. The kitchen counters were plywood beneath strip cabinetry. The bridal suite had no closet system. The bathroom sinks were detached. Pipes capped neatly. It wasn't vandalized. It was reverted back to its original, aging bones. What did you do? She whispered. I picked up the final labeled box. I removed what belongs to me. You're ruining my wedding, she hissed. No, I replied quietly. I'm just no longer subsidizing it. My mother sputtered threats about lawsuits. My father muttered something about family betrayal. But they knew there was no contract stating the improvements were gifts. The invoices were in my name. The payments traced to my accounts. The permits filed under my firm. They had mistaken access for ownership. That was their error. 47 hours and 30 minutes after the ultimatum, I walked out the front door. Behind me stood the same fragile Victorian shell they once couldn't afford to save. Only now, it was Kelsey's responsibility. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the maintenance crew. I was free. 2 days later, when my sister walked in, she wished she had never stepped inside. We took the cabinet hardware. We took the light switch covers. We even took the antique door knobs, replacing them with the cheapest hollow contractor grade knobs I could find at the hardware store. By that time 48 hours were up. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a shell. It was an echo chamber of bare studs and subflooring. It looked exactly like what it was, a house that had been stripped off its soul. I stood in the foyer one last time. The walls were scarred where its sconces used to be. The floor was still without the rugs. It was ugly. It was dark. It was barren. It was the physical manifestation of my absence. I dropped the key on the floor of the hollow room. It made a lonely metal sound against the wood. I walked out, got into my car, and drove away. I didn't look back. I turned off my phone. But I could imagine the scene, Kelsey arriving with her bridal party phones out, ready to film a home tour for her flowers, expecting a magazine spread, walking into a construction site. It drove to a hotel on the other side off Savannah. I ordered room service. I took a long hot shower, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't worry about a leaking pipe or a drafty window. When I finally turned my phone back on, it almost melted from the notifications. 17 missed calls from my mother, 12 from my father, 30 texts from Kelsey. I opened one from Kelsey. It was all caps. "You ruined my aesthetic. This is sick. Put it back." Then a voicemail from my father. His voice was shaking with rage. "Haley, this is theft. You stole the fixtures. You stole the value of this house. You are going to prison. Put it back, or I am calling the police." I listened to it twice. They weren't sad I was gone. They weren't worried about where I was sleeping. They were furious that the amenities were gone. They were shocked, not because I was cruel, but because the appliance had stopped working. This is the trap of normalizing cruelty. They had normalized my exploitation so much that my leaving felt like theft to them. They genuinely believed they were entitled to my labor, my money, my taste. They thought the house came with a Haley warranty. Well, the warranty had just expired. The next morning, a process server handed me a large envelope in the hotel lobby. My father wasn't bluffing. He was suing me. The document was thick, heavy with legal jargon, destruction of property, theft of fixtures, intentional infliction of emotional distress. He was claiming damages in excess of $200,000. I felt a moment of panic, a cold spike of fear in my chest. Did I go too far? If new fixtures were legally considered part of the real estate once attached, maybe I had crossed a line. Maybe my anger had just cost me my freedom. I called Grace. Grace wasn't just my best friend. She was a shark of a family low attorney who specialized in estate disputes. She had been my grandmother years executed. "Meet me at the office," she said. Her voice clipped. "Bring everything." I sat in her glass-walled conference room, Thella's suit sitting between us like a grenade. Grace flipped through it, her face unreadable. "This is a temper tantrum, Healy," she said finally. "He's throwing legal spaghetti at the wall. But we need to respond. Let's dig." We spent hours going through the old renovation paperwork. Every receipt, every invoice, every permit. I had documentation for everything. The chandelier, the marble, the faucets. I had proof I paid for them. But Grace wasn't looking at the receipts. She was digging through the original transfer files from 5 years ago when my grandmother died and my parents took over the property. She frowned, pulling out a dusty manila folder labeled simply 2019. "Ryan Legal, Haley," she said slowly, tapping the file. "Do you remember the lawsuit your dad had back then? The supplier dispute." I nodded. I remembered the tension in the house. He had been sued by a major material supplier for non-payment. He was terrified of losing everything, his business, his savings. The house, that was the excuse they used for why they couldn't pay for their renovations. They claimed their assets were frozen. Grace pulled out a document. It wasn't a receipt. It was a deed, a quick claim deed to hide the house from creditors, she said, looking at me over her glasses. "Your parents signed this. They transferred the property fully to you." I stared at the paper. The memory came back in a rush. They had sat me down at the kitchen table speaking in hushed tones. They told me it was just a formality, a temporary shield. They called it a tax shelter strategy. They said they were putting the house in my name to protect the family legacy and that they would file the reversal paperwork. As soon as the lawsuit was settled, Grace tapped the paper again. They never filed the reversal. Healy, what? They were too cheap, she said. Idri, humorless laugh escaping her lips, sought to transfer it back to themselves. They would have had to pay the transfer taxes and recording fees. They just didn't. They assumed you would never check. They assumed you would always be the good little daughter who did what she was told. She smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that made me realize exactly why she was the best lawyer in Savannah, legally. She said, "You are not the tenant. You are not the contractor. You are the sole owner of that house. Your parents aren't landlords. They are squatters." I felt the room spin. The reality of it crashed into me. For 5 years, I hadn't been renovating their house. I had been renovating my house. They had been living in my house rentry, acting like kings in a castle they didn't own. They had evicted me from my own property. The fear evaporated, replaced by your cold, hard clarity. Grace picked up her phone. "Do you want to send a letter or do you want to do this in person?" I thought about Kelsey's wedding rehearsal. It was happening tomorrow morning. My mother had posted on Facebook that they were saving the day, hiring emergency stagers to make the empty house look presentable. They were determined to have their show. They were determined to win in person. I said, the next morning, the Savannah sun was blazing. I pulled up to the house, my house. The driveway was full of cars. Caterers were unloading trays. A florist van was blocking the garage. A rental company was setting up white folding chairs on the lawn. My parents were on the porch directing traffic, looking stressed but triumphant. They thought they had fixed that problem. They thought they had risked me. I didn't come alone. I parked my car and stepped out. Behind me, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up, lights flashing silently. Two deputies got out, adjusting their belts. My father saw me first. He marched down the steps, his face turning a violent shade of purple. "You have some nerves showing up here," he shouted, his voice booming over the sound of the wind. "After what you did, get off my property before I have you arrested for trespassing." I kept walking. My heels clicked rhythmically in the pavement. I didn't stop until I was face to face with him. Kelsey ran out onto the porch, still in her silk bride robe, a glass of champagne in her hand. "Get her out of here, Dad," she screamed. "She's trying to ruin my day again." I looked at my father. I looked at my mother, who was standing behind him, arms crossed, looking at me with pure disgust. "You can't kick us out, Healy," my father spat, pointing a finger in my face. "I bought this place. I own it." I reached into my bag and pulled out the certified copy of the quitclaim deed. I held it up, the paper crisp in the humid air. "No, Dad," I said. My voice was low, steady. "You didn't own this place. You hid it to save your own skin because you didn't want to pay your debts and you were too cheap to take it back." I handed him the document. He looked at it. I saw his eyes scan the page. I saw the moment the air left his lungs. He saw his own signature, the date, the notary stamp, the undeniable truth of his own greed. "This house is mine." I said. "It has been mine for 5 years. You are trespassing and I want you out now." The deputy stepped forward. "Sir, is this your signature?" One of them masked, gesturing to the paper. My father sputtered. This, we had an agreement. It was a tax thing." "Is this sire's signature?" The deputy repeated, Hishin resting on his belt. "Yes," my father whispered. "Then you need to vacate the premises," the deputy said. "The owner has requested your removal." My mother started screaming. It wasn't a cry of sorrow. It was the shriek of me and losing control. "This is a misunderstanding. We are her parents. You can't do this." I looked at her, the woman who gave me 48 hours to leave. The woman who replaced him without a second thought. "You have 48 minutes, I said. "Get your things, get your guests, and get out." The wedding was canceled. Well, not canceled. It was moved to a motel banquet hall out by the highway. I heard the lighting was terrible. I didn't keep the house. I couldn't. The memories were too tainted. The walls held too many echoes of my own desperation. I sold as is. Even strip market was hot. And the structural work I had done added massive value and made a significant profit. I used that capital to launch my own boutique architecture firm. I named Ellie and Nording after the only person in that family who had ever loved me without conditions. My parents tried to sue me again, claiming fraud. It didn't go anywhere. The paper trail was too clean. They ended up in a small apartment, their reputation and ruins, their finances exposed. Kelsey stopped speaking to me, which was honestly the best wedding gift she could have given. I sat in my new office looking out at the Savannah skyline. I was no longer fixer. I was the builder. I had cut the cord, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of falling. I had built a new foundation, one they could never touch. This is the justice of the sewer. The best revenge wasn't the eviction. It wasn't the humiliation. It was taking the resources they tried to steal and using them to plant a garden they could never burn down. If you have ever had to burn a bridge to save yourself, share this story and tell me in the comments what was the moment you finally say to now.